Welcome to our presentation. Today we're going to talk about nicotine. Here's the table of contents, and now Isis is going to present to you the introduction.
Yes, so what is nicotine? Nicotine is a natural stimulant found primarily in tobacco plants. It is known for its addictive properties, making it a major contributor to the tobacco dependence. And its effects on the brain and body are complex and wide-ranging because it influences many cognitive and behavioral functions. And its addictive properties contribute to a worldwide health epidemic with millions of deaths every year. That's why it's important to know how it works and what it is. How nicotine affects the brain and the body. So when nicotine enters the body, it travels to the brain and binds to the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors. These receptors play a role in neurotransmission and are involved in many cognitive and behavioral functions. Nicotine works as a full agonist of these receptors, so when nicotine is binding to them, it leads to the release of a bunch of neurotransmitters, such as dopamine, and this is, of course, associated with pleasure and reward. This release of dopamine is a key factor in nicotine's addictive potential, as it creates the feelings of euphoria and reinforces the desire to use nicotine containing products more. When you use nicotine a lot, so chronic nicotine exposure, it can lead to desensitization of the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors. And because the receptors become less responsive to nicotine or to acetylcholine, um, it may cause tolerance to nicotine, and because of that, you need more of the drug to feel it. Also, the receptors, the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors, are in the autonomic nervous system, and this regulates the bodily functions. So, binding to these receptors can cause increased heart rate and blood pressure. The brain structures that nicotine targets. So, at first, these receptors, so the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors, are in many brain areas, as well as in the VTA, the ventral tegmental area. Here, the nicotine influences the function of both dopaminergic and GABAergic neurons by binding to the alpha 4, alpha 6, and the beta 2 subunits of the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors, and this modulates the reinforcement effect of nicotine. There has been done studies in mice that shown that the absence of these subunits impairs the nicotinic self-administration. So this shows their role in the addiction pathways. So the activation of the VTA leads to the increased dopaminergic signaling in the nucleus accumbens. So that's the second part, and this is the central mechanism underlying addiction because of the feeling of reward. Then through the stream, it also affects the prefrontal cortex. So it goes from here to here to here, and is involved in cognitive functions such as attention, decision making, and working memory. And nicotine modulates these functions. And that's it.
Addiction and behavioral effects of nicotine. Smoking improves mood and concentration, decreases anger and stress, relaxes muscles, and reduces appetite. Seeking these temporary feelings results in addiction. Nicotine also causes long-term changes in gene expression, which leads later to behavioral habits. It changes the expression of the gene CFOS. It causes the desensitization of nicotinic acetylcholine receptors. It directly acts on cholinergic system. It increases the neurotransmitter release. All of these changes cause bad behavioral habits. Nicotine and genes expression. Nicotine affects adults by altering expression of genes involved in cell survival and disease states, but it affects more strongly earlier development stages like fetuses and teenagers. So, maternal and paternal smoking has a lot of bad effects on the fetus, and of course, adolescent exposure has long term changes in gene expressions in some brain regions, which is so bad for the development of these teenagers.
So now I'm going to talk about nicotine withdrawal and relapse. There are different nicotine withdrawal effects, for example, that anxiety increases and that you have cognitive deficits. Also mediated by changes in gene expressions and in brain region, for example, in the hippocampus or the IPN. It contributes to anxiety and stress-related behaviors. To the cognitive function impairment, the ortho gene expression in regions like the medial PFC and dorsal hippocampus. My next point is the neural mechanism of drug release. So it's persistent to memory of nicotine's rewards, withdrawal symptoms, and conditional cues drive relapse. We can see change in gene expressions, increased C-phos protein, and glutamatergic signaling. Also, people who stop smoking have a high chance of gaining a lot of weight because they cannot control their appetite after stopping to smoke, and there is also a relapse vulnerability, which is very high with nicotine. Here you can see different treatment and harm reductions, so there are different treatment options and strategies. These are some examples, like the behavioral therapy and nicotine replacement therapy. I think you might have heard about some of them. Support groups, also very important, avoiding triggers, and another very important point is education and awareness. So to come to the conclusion, nicotine is highly addictive and it affects our body and brain, as you saw in our presentation. It causes death worldwide due to cancer and other diseases, and it is also very important to continue educating people about the risk. Here are our sources, and I thank you very much for your attention. I hope you had fun watching our presentation. Goodbye.